everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sumeet Bal. I'm the Communications Director at the California Immigrant Policy Center, and I'm here with my good friend, Sasha Feldstein, who's the Economic Justice Policy Manager at CIPC. Hey, Sasha, how are you?
Hi, Sumeet.
I'm so glad to have a little afternoon chat with you. And I wanted to chat with you a little bit about kind of the work that we've been doing at CIPC. You know, we have really seen a really interesting year in the work that we do here, the campaign work we do. And so I kind of wanted to get your take on it a little bit. But first, just for our audience, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind kind of telling us a little bit about yourself and maybe what brought you to CIPC.
Sure. So I'm Sasha. I'm the Economic Justice Policy Manager at CIPC, and I've been with CIPC since March of 2018. And I think what brought me to CIPC was a lot of luck. Shout out to Jyotsrup and Almas for taking a chance on me. And but what brings me to this work kind of overall is that I am just firmly committed to the idea that our liberation is bound up with each other's and that I'm not free until all of us are free. I think part of my politicization started when I was younger, and I learned kind of how my parents chose my name. And they had intentionally picked a name where they were hoping that when I applied to jobs, people wouldn't be able to outright tell my gender. They wanted a semi-androgynous name. And just the fact that my mom was thinking about my job prospects while I was still in the womb said a lot about like the way our labor market is structured, the way our society and our economy is structured. And I didn't want to have people think like that or live in fear like that. So for me, that's a lot of what drives me in this work. I'm also really driven by my Jewish heritage and my Jewish values. And I'm really driven by a learning process that I've gone through over the years, where I've seen time and time again where the people who are directly impacted by policy are not the ones making policy. And as a result, we have some really messed up policies. And we have broken systems, and we have systems that, stem directly from our legacy and history of racism in our country that are disproportionately impacting communities of color and Black communities. And so I feel like a sense of duty to help dismantle those systems and also make sure that the people who are directly impacted are the ones who are really driving our policy agendas.
Sasha, thank you so much. It was so nice to get to know you a little bit more. And when you talked a little bit about your name, I feel like I really wanted to jump in and say, I totally understand how meaningful a name is and how it does really set someone on who they are in life. But that might be a conversation for another time. I did want to kind of touch upon a couple of other things that you talked about. Two things that really struck me were how you had observed that a lot of the people who create policy are not part of communities that are impacted by policy, and the importance of maybe having a voice at the table. I think we've heard that before. And then the other is, this really strikes me, the sort of disparities that exist in our state. California is a really progressive state, and I would not think that what we see here is actually maybe what others think exists here. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. I mean, California is a state that has 11 million immigrants who enrich our communities every day, and that we see these disparities not just in these communities, but in many communities in California. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about those two things, the impact of voice and disparity, in your work in relationship to what you do at CIPC.
Yeah, totally. So I think in terms of representation, I deeply believe that representation matters. And I believe that that's not enough because we have systemic structural inequities embedded in our state, in our country, um, where even if you had certain voices, quote, at the table, you have to ask yourself who's setting the table, like who, you know, and if you're just making efforts to be inclusive and inviting people to the table, well, you still have that power. And so you're doing nothing to actually change the balances of power that exist in our society. And I think that's where the real work needs to happen. And I think that's also why California as a state gets to live on as this, you know, and get to be celebrated as this progressive state, and yet we still have some of the highest levels of inequality and poverty in the country. And so I think we need to do a lot more like inner work and look at ourselves, and especially, you know, even quote unquote progressive legislators in our state or progressive communities aren't necessarily always willing to make the sacrifices that it's really going to take, because they see it as a sacrifice. They don't see it as like a step towards our collective liberation. But really having the courage to be bold, to think outside the box, and to not just invite people to the table, but to actually go to communities and say, you know what, you are the expert in your lived experience. You know best what needs to change in our society, and I'm willing to work with you and do what it takes to make that happen, even if it doesn't directly benefit me. Because I know it benefits me in the long run, because it benefits my community. It'll make my community stronger. It'll make my state stronger. And so that's why one of the things at CIPC that I was most proud of and excited about was this past year, California had set up a Future of Work Commission to really talk about what the future of work looks like, and not to go beyond the conversation of robots taking over the economy and automation, but to actually talk about what's the nature of work that we have set up in our society, how is this impacting workers, and how can we create a new social compact. And we worked very closely with our partners to say, you can't have that conversation unless you're going to talk about the most vulnerable workers in our state, which are primarily people who work in the day labor and domestic work industry, people who are undocumented and who are working. And so what was really awesome is we worked with our partners, and our partners could have done this without us, like they didn't need us, but it was still cool just to get to be a part of and to witness. But actually got Julie Su, the head of the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, and many members of her team to come down to Los Angeles, come to the Worker Center and meet directly with workers. Instead of trying to send people to Sacramento or, you know, engage people in the public comment process, they said, you know what, you come to us this time and meet with us. And they were willing to do that. And I felt like that was a really good example of some of these things we're talking about.
I really love that, and I love how someone who held a leadership position was willing to come to you to kind of understand a little bit more in a lot of ways, instead of always having to go to Sacramento and tell your story or prove that you need something, because it sometimes feels like that. And I'm wondering, you know, as we've gone through this legislative season and as we head in to the fall and think about the election and think about our communities having gone through so many pivotal moments this year, and so many different kinds of crisis in a way. And I'm just wondering, like, if you weren't in this movement, or if you were sort of on the periphery, what could you do if you wanted to participate, or if you wanted to meaningfully make change in your community or support you in your work? How might you suggest someone do that, or how did you maybe start that?
Yeah, I think there is no excuse for anyone to have to come and ask someone of like, what can I do? Because there's so much information out there. There's so much need. There's so much to do. I think you have to ask yourself, what am I willing to devote my time, energy, and skills to, um, and what is needed in the communities. So, talking directly to organizations. You don't have to sign up for 100 different organizations listservs. That's not sustainable. You can't be an active participant and volunteer with 100 different organizations. That's just not going to happen. But like, pick one or two who are doing good work in the community that you really care about, and give your time, energy, skills, and resources. Follow their lead. Especially, it should be an organization that is led by people who are directly impacted, and follow their lead and say, what do you need? And be willing to do it. I actually don't think it's that hard.
Oh my gosh, that brings me kind of to my last question for you, which is, we're trying to, we're in this work because we really believe that this work will create change, and we hope sustained change over time, which takes time and takes energy and takes money. And this fall, we're about to do a big fundraiser. The month of September for CIPC is this month where we really want to tell people a little bit about ourselves and a little bit about our work. And it culminates in this really interesting community event where we get to share with each other and talk with artists and activists about kind of some of the issues that our communities face, but also ways that we can be impactful. And the event is called Policy and Paletas. And I was just wondering if you could tell someone why they should attend this event from your perspective.
I think that Policy and Paletas, um, I think bringing joy to the work is really important. We need art, we need music, we need celebration, we need people to be able to bring their whole selves to the work. And so this seems to me like an opportunity to do that. And especially in the policy world, I don't think we take enough time to do that, and to celebrate, um, you know, everything that we have in our communities. Like, we have the resources that we need to build power in California. We need help. You should still, support us. But like, really being able to honor and acknowledge that is a really cool opportunity, and a fun thing to do.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And thank you so much, Sasha. It's always so wonderful to be in community with you and have these conversations that continue to help me personally grow. And I hope so many of our audience members think about a few things and few ways that we can continue this work. And we hope that all of you will join us on September 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. on Facebook Live at caimmigrant.org. And you'll get to visit with more folks like Sasha, and be in community with everyone, learn a little bit about us, but also collectively celebrate and bring our power together to, show our leaders and bring our voice to the table, and not just a seat behind the table, but a seat at the table.